You are listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe.
Hello, I'm Eric Lalor. Welcome to episode 38 of House of Football with Sports Joe. Delighted to say, joined in studio again by Enda, Coll, and via the witchcraft that is Zoom, former Irish international striker Simon Cox. Simon Cox, how the hell are you? And welcome to House of Football.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm good. Very well, thank you.
You're looking very fit, looking very... Well, come here, can I just ask you, are you broadcasting from a prison cell at the moment? Because that looks a little bit like a cell from behind. Not that I know of what a prison cell looks like.
I was going to say, when was the last time you were there? No. This is just one of the consultation rooms that we have at the gym that I own. So it's upstairs. So if you hear some strange music going on downstairs in a minute, that'll be what the class is on.
Brilliant. A class. So you're running a gym now, Simon. You're keeping fit anyway, keeping active.
Yeah, listen, I knew that if I stopped working out when I finished playing, there was only one way for me, and that was going to probably end up with like a very big waistline. So I felt I needed something to do, and I got into the fitness game when I went out to Australia. The F45s out there were brilliant. So when I came back and retired, it was definitely something that I felt like it was going to benefit me, but obviously help loads of people around the area to stay healthy, stay fit.
And where are you based there, Simon?
This one's in Southend.
Southend.
My house is about 45 minutes away, so I just travel in most days, to be fair.
Simon, can I ask, this is something that I've been sort of questioning over the last couple of weeks, watching Spurs and watching what Ange Postecoglou is doing with the Spurs players and how fit and fast and quick they are in comparison to his Celtic side that, sort of died on their feet around 70 minutes. What is the difference between the fitness of a top level Premier League player or like a championship player to the average person? Like, how big a gap is that, have you seen?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I'd love to say that I've got the Spurs guys coming in here and that's why they're doing really well, but that's not the case, and I would love to say that. But listen, the difference is the ability to be able to keep doing the same thing at a high intensity level over and over again, the repetitive nature of the sprints that they do on a consistent basis, whereas and that comes down to loads of factors, the diet, the training regime, the rest, the recovery, everything. It goes into everything. So, what they're doing at Spurs. I mean, I've been to Spurs' training ground. Lucky enough, I played in a behind closed doors game there, and you can just tell that they've got the best of everything. So there's no, I'd imagine under Ange, there's no stone unturned when it comes down to prep and it comes down to recovery, especially because they play pretty much like every other day at the minute.
And I suppose what baffles me as well is like at top level sport, Premier League level, Ange Ball is praised for the high intensity. Liverpool players, the high intensity. Now, I said I wouldn't speak about Manchester United, but here I am again already, less than 4 minutes into the podcast. I'm speaking about Manchester United. Manchester United again, because I'm a bitter, heartbroken fan, Simon. And when I look at Manchester United and their overpaid egomaniacs, we're hearing the complaints from inside the dressing room that they're doing too much running. Where is this too much running happening? Because we don't see it on the pitch. It's obviously a different type of training that Spurs and Liverpool are doing than to Manchester United then, or is it just an attitude problem, do you think?
I think a bit of both, really. Like, from what I understand of like Klopp at Liverpool, for example, I understand these pre-seasons are horrendous. Like, they are literally running track and just laps after laps after laps. But it's the buy-in from the players, the buy-in from the players who really want to work for him. There's a real togetherness from the manager down to the players, and I'm guessing all around the football club. And Ange has done that the same with Spurs. Relatively unknown person to, I guess, a lot of people, and then all of a sudden has walked into Spurs with just a real nice way about him. Like, don't get me wrong, I would never want to cross him because he's got that stature about him that you'd think, he'd give you a good kick if you needed one. But then with Manchester United, it just looks like they've got too many, what I remember used to be called like the Maradonas, the ones who basically don't want to do the hard work but want to get all the praise for when they score a goal or when they win a game, but they don't want to do the ugly side of the game. I remember a great quote from Brendan Rodgers when he used to coach me. In teams, you need soldiers and you need artists. And Manchester United seem to have loads of like the artists, but they don't have any of the soldiers. The ones who dig in deep for you, the ones who do the horrible, nasty, gritty stuff on a cold, wet, horrible night at Stoke away. Do you know what I mean? Those ones. But they've got all the flair players, the Bruno Fernandes, the Rashfords and whatever, who really don't want to do the hard, horrible yards, but they want the praise when they do score the goals.
Would you put the current malaise at Manchester United, Simon, down to Ten Hag, the ownership, the players? Is there any specific, or is it just the club as a whole?
Club as a whole is rotten from top to bottom. There's been such unrest from the Glazers down, and then the turnover of managers has not been great over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and but they put managers on long contracts, and then all of a sudden they have to get rid of them, and they bring their players in, and then they get sacked after 2 years, and then all of a sudden they've got to get them out, and the new manager's got to get new players in, and there's just too much turnover of players, too many turnover of managers. Yeah, it's unsettling at the top, obviously, but from being at football clubs where you can't change what goes on at the top. Like, you can only change what goes on the field, and the players have got to look at themselves, the managers have got to look at themselves, and what they're doing, obviously, at day to day on the training ground isn't working. So something really needs to change, and change pretty quickly. Otherwise, Manchester United are going to go only one way.
Another ex-Irish international, Simon, said that he was watching the United-Bournemouth game at the weekend, and he said, I don't think it's that the manager has lost the players. I don't think the players, it's a lack of effort. It's just a lack of quality. That those Manchester United players just aren't good enough. Would you subscribe to that theory at all, Simon? Or do you think they have got good players, they just need to be putting more effort in?
Yeah, it's very hard to turn around and say like Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford are not good footballers. Do you know what I mean? Because they are. Like, genuinely, they've got really good technique. They've got really good ability. But at the minute, they've just lost that love for the game, and they're just not finding that system that works and the formula that works for them. Now, that can come from a number of things of, not winning games. Genuinely, like that could be the only thing. Because you saw, like, last year when Fernandes was doing really well and Casemiro was playing really nicely in the middle of the park, and they were a good outfit, like, for a small part of the season. Whereas then you look at if it's Ten Hag, and if it's the way that it looks like he's a big dictatorship. That's what it looks like from the outset. It doesn't look like he's never going to be the arm around the shoulder of the Klopps and the Peps and what I'd imagine Ange is like. He's not that one who's going to get in there and have a cuddle and understand what your family situations is like. It's basically like, you come in at this time, you train at this time, you leave at this time, you eat at this time, and that's it, and you sleep at this time. And if you don't do it, then I guess you kind of have like a Jadon Sancho situation all over again, with not just one player, you have it with 26, 27 players.
Before Eric turns this into the United We Stand podcast, we'll talk about you for a second, Simon. We were talking about preseason there. In a sick way, do you sort of miss preseason?
Not at 36, no. It's one of those, you have to do it, but you dread it that you're going to have to do it, and but it is definitely one of those things that when you retire and everybody's going back to pre-season, you kind of think,
I don't miss that.
Do one more. But then I really, like, when I played in like some, 5-a-sides and some charity games and stuff like that, all of a sudden you realise that pre-season would have been absolutely horrendous for me. So leave that one there, I think.
Well, we're coming up to Christmas now as well. Like, this is the period I would say you most enjoy being retired in a way, because it's this period that people underappreciate what footballers do. They're stuck in hotel rooms on Christmas Eve, on New Year's Eve, on Boxing Day and stuff. So, like, in terms of retirement, like, is that something that you've enjoyed, getting away from that element of the game?
I do you know what, right? I actually didn't mind Christmas. Like, I think Christmas is one of those times of year that the games come around thick and fast, and they it's just game after game after game. Yeah, okay, the travelling, the being away from the families and stuff like that is tough. But I'd imagine 90% of the managers are pretty good around Christmas. You know, they especially like into December, they'll probably turn around to you and say, like, look, this day you got to go and do your shopping. Like, get all your Christmas stuff, send the wives and the girlfriends or whatever out, get that all done, so that you haven't got to do that in like the last 2 weeks when we need you sort of focused on that. And then when it comes down to sort of, you know, the day before the game, Boxing Day, then you got the one on like 27, 28, then 30, 31st, whatever it is over the Christmas period. And you're playing like 5 games in 15 days or whatever it is. It's there's no training. It's just rest and recover. So it's what you do outside of the games and away from the training ground is the most vital part. So you try if you're a footballer now, try and think smartly about what you get your kids for Christmas, so you're not having to run around after like yeah, in the garden, get some mistakes inside.
That's why a lot of footballers who are dads buy PlayStations for their kids. They're going to just sit down and just chill. Unless your name is Jane Sancho. Simon, so just on that, like, fascinating. That's a great point you raised, and I'm fascinated by the whole Christmas thing. So, like, there would be times, because you are playing on Boxing Day, or as we like to call it here in Ireland, Stevens is his day. You would be in a hotel on Christmas Day. Like, I mean, how does that? Would you leave on Christmas morning and go to the hotel, or how would that work?
Yeah, again, depends. Same for like New Year's Eve as well. So some managers, I've had it all. I've had in on Christmas morning. I've had not train at all, and I've had it in on Christmas sort of like late afternoon.
Yeah.
And some managers will determine what they do the following year on what the result was the previous year. So it can be whatever they decide. But so let's say, for instance, like you haven't trained, you would then meet at a hotel somewhere, or you'd go to the stadium or the training ground, and then you get the bus up, and then you'd be in the hotel Christmas evening. But Christmas is kind of done then, right? Like, Christmas seems to be like the longest day in the world. Like, you get up really early with the kids, all of a sudden by 2:00 everyone wants to sleep. So by that time everyone's like, right, and then you've got your bag ready to go. But if you've trained on Christmas morning, normally most managers tend to get you in, let's say around about 7:30 start. Like, they really want you in, like, get in, get it done, get out. It's literally probably about a half an hour, 40-minute session, like quick meeting outside, move the legs, nothing tactical really, probably a little bit of set pieces, and get out. You know, nothing. You'd probably be in and out in an hour and a half. Nothing too strenuous.
Not too
Or
bad.
I've gone the other way, and nothing all the way through the morning, and then meet at the training ground for a quick hour at like 4:00. Get that done, straight on the bus to a hotel. So yeah, there's about 3 or 4 different ways that people do it.
Difficult for players, I suppose, who have kids or young kids to explain to the kids, look, the reason you have that PlayStation, that amazing bike, is because your daddy's a professional footballer and I have to go training now. So that's the way to justify it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I thought it was Santa. Oh, actually, if there's any young kids listen to this, that's okay. Let's move on swiftly.
What do you miss most about being a professional footballer? Like, is it the camaraderie of being part of the team, that everyone's in it together? Is it like the training sessions, or what is it that you miss most?
The goals, scoring goals. I think this is, again, one of the reasons why I set up the F45, is because I knew that one of the biggest things I would miss would be the dressing rooms. So like getting in every day, having that banter every day, the chat about football from the night before, or what did you get up to the weekend, and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, there's no 3 points or anything that we talk about here, but it's results here. But that was one of the biggest things that I miss about being a player now is that whole dressing room togetherness, because there's nothing like it. If I went into an office and did a 9 to 5 in an office, you'd not you'd not be allowed to talk about a lot of the stuff that you talk about in the dressing room. But,
what goes on in the locker room stays in the locker room. Yeah,
exactly right. But yeah, so that's probably one of the biggest things I miss.
130 goals in over 500 appearances for club and country. That's a pretty decent strike rate, Simon. Do you have a favourite goal? You must have.
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest with you. I think you'd be. This doesn't sound really big-headed here, but it'd really be hard to find someone who's got a pretty good highlight reel as much as mine is. Like,
yeah, you've got some screamers now, in fairness.
So, and that's probably the most big-headed comment you'll ever hear on your podcast. But I don't know, like maybe the I'd say my top four would be like the goal I scored at Swindon, the one that looped over my shoulder.
Oh yeah.
That one, then scored a very similar one at Birmingham at home for Forest. My first Premier League goal was in there away at Spurs.
That's a special moment for you scoring that.
Yeah, listen, I had my mum and dad in a box as well, and sort of as it was going in, I turned around and I could see them like
amazing
jump up the station and stuff like that, and it was just amazing. Listen, obviously, your first ever goal is going to be in there as well, because it's your first one. And that's the one that sort of makes you really believe. And
do you still remember it clearly, Simon?
My first one?
Yeah. You do, yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. Northampton, I was on loan at Northampton, played away at Leyton Orient. Literally, I scored, and my mind had just blown. I had no idea what to do. Didn't know where to go, where to run. So yeah, it was. I do remember it.
Love that.
I was listening to a podcast with Bryson DeChambeau, the golfer, and he shot 58 in a competition for Liv, and he was able to talk through every single shot of that entire round. Are you someone who, like, you remember your goals, but are you someone who remembers the anatomy of that goal as well? You remember what you did with your body? Would you have found yourself being like a hyper-focused type of player?
I reckon I could probably, if you could give me you're probably going to give me one as well, and I'm not going to remember it. But if you could probably tell me a game and I scored in it, I could probably tell you like how I was feeling or what the game was like. And I'm one of those people that actually can remember quite a lot. You're going to point out a goal now.
No, I got to point out a non-goal, and it was one of the most miraculous goal line recoveries I've ever seen, and it was in your last Western City Warriors in Sydney. And I watched it again this morning, Simon. I was like I don't even blame you. I don't blame you. It was an incredible. Like, I mean, how did you feel in that moment? Like, what just happened?
I think my face says the story as soon as they do you know what? It was. Yeah, it was away at Melbourne City, and then I sort of got it under the goalkeeper, and I was like, I kind of knew that it didn't have enough.
Yeah.
So I knew I then had to go and like get another touch. But did I think that I had someone breathing down my neck? Absolutely not. Did I think I had two people breathing down my neck? Absolutely not. But then it was the whole. So he cleared it off the line. And then it hit his mate and gone
ricocheted out. Yeah,
I was just unlucky that it didn't hit his mate and go in anyway.
It was that good. It looked like a training ground move. It was incredible.
You might have lost a few yards of pace before that chance. You're one of a couple of Irish players that have gone to Australia and played some football. Damien Duff went. Wes Houlihan went as well for a short period of time. Like, what's that experience like? Because obviously, like, they're obsessed with football out there.
Yeah, if you can hear the music now, the class has just started.
Nice back and track.
Yeah, it's great, mate. It really is. And I was one of these at the time. I was sort of gone away from the English game, and like my body was not starting to shut down, but I was injured. I needed surgery and stuff like that. So I had the opportunity to go out to Australia, and do you know what? It was amazing. Like, just sort of never really expected to go either. But I felt like I needed a bit of a reset, and going out there, seeing, the stadiums and stuff. And I'm speaking to Marcus Babbel, who was the first person to sort of get on the phone to me, and he sent me a basic video of like the training ground and the stadium and stuff like that. And do you know what? There's a lot to be said about waking up in the morning, seeing the sun shining, and going out and having like an amazing lifestyle. Like food's great. Football's really, really competitive as well. Like, it's compared to what people probably think of it. Everybody wants to try and play the right way, so they play out from the back. They play nice, intricate football. Obviously, some are better than others, which is same in any other league. But there's a little bit different to playing on boggy, sandy pitches in the UK, and then going out to Australia and playing in like 24, 25 degree heat. It's there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said for that.
Sounds amazing, Simon. And if I was coming towards the end of my career, I'd be going straight to Australia as well. You sold that well.
To be honest, mate, I think it was definitely a really, really good move for me. And I really enjoyed my time there. Obviously, it coincided with COVID, which wasn't great. But had that not happened, I probably would have stayed there for a lot longer.
And as you alluded to there as well, Simon, obviously it was great playing in nice weather every day. But the facilities, even for the clubs in Australia, in the A-League, the facilities at all these clubs are top notch, aren't they?
Yeah, well, you play in our stadium was 35,000 seated at full capacity, and you would get it when you played like Sydney FC, and they've now got MacArthur there. So like you would fill the stadiums like for the derbies. Obviously, because Australia is such a big country, when you're flying, every away game is pretty much a fly, unless you're in sort of New South Wales or if you're in the Melbourne area and you're playing locally. But so like your away support is never really the same. But in terms of stadia and what you're playing, like you like I say, I was 33 at the time, and I was playing at Southend of like a 7,000-8,000 seater stadium. All of a sudden, you go play in the Sunshine at 35,000 seater stadium. Okay, granted, there's not 35,000 people in there, but you still get the buzz of the big stadiums, lovely stadiums, and everything else, which is great.
In terms of your international career, Simon, like you've probably got one of the more interesting stories in terms of coming into the squad and that period of Irish football with Trapattoni. Can you just talk us through like the call up for Ireland, the feeling around that, and even just the idea that someone like Giovanni Trapattoni, who had a really good reputation at the time, the feeling of him wanting you to play for the Ireland squad?
At the time.
Yeah. Well, in this country, let's say.
That was a caveat.
Yeah. It was so surreal. I'll be honest with you. Like I was obviously playing at West Brom at the time, playing in the Premier League, and was playing well. We were doing great, and I remember the press officer at the time. He said to me, "Listen, I've just had a call from the national team, and there's a chance you could get a call up." And I was like, "Brilliant! I've just booked my holidays." So I'm like, "What do I do?" And he was like, "Listen, you go, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So you obviously had to cancel the holidays. But in my head, and I've said this numerous times, in my head because I was it was the Carlin Nations, and I was literally in my head I felt like all I was going was to be a part of a training camp, just go and sort of see what it's like, them kind of get a look at me, see how I sort of integrate with people, and then sort of if you do well at the start of next year, then you sort of get brought into the squad, and then you play on from there. As it was, I got called into the squad, trained like 2 or 3 days, then obviously played in the Republic of Ireland versus Northern Ireland game, scored. Then we played in the Scotland game, we won that, end up winning the Carlin Nations. Then we go away, play in the qualifier, get the result there. Then we go off to where do we go? Belgium, and play Italy, and score in that one. And all of a sudden, like in 4 games I scored 2 goals, and I feel like I'm like a massive part of it. And it's it was just in such a short space of time, such a surreal moment for me to be able to sort of go from someone who had never stepped foot on an international stage to score 2 goals, played 4 games, played against, what is the biggest derby in pretty much Ireland history, in Northern Ireland, and it's probably apart from England. And then all of a sudden, you're playing one of the best nations in the world in Italy as well, and you played in the Euro qualifier. So it was just such a surreal time, mate. I'll be honest with you. And there wasn't really time to sort of think about anything else other than just what being in the moment.
Did you speak to him when that first call came in about you possibly declaring or playing for Ireland? Did Trapp call you in any way? Did he have a chat with you?
No. The first time I spoke to him was when I went in for lunch. He was sat around the table. Him and Marco and all the other staff were all sat around, and it was the first time I spoke to him really just then.
And you went.
His English wasn't great anyway, so the conversation would have been fantastic.
Yeah, who was his translator? What was his translator's name again? Maria or Maria? Anyway, she wasn't there, no, obviously. Manuela, that's the one. Yeah. Just that goal against Italy in Liège, Simon. I remember Stephen Hunt crossed the ball and you slid it in the back post and confirmed the 2-0 win. You got a bang off the post. How bad was that?
No, it was fine. Yeah,
it was just an impact injury, yeah?
Yeah, it was just one of those make it look as bad, like I steamrolled in there.
Was there a rumour of you going to Celtic around that time as well, Simon? I vaguely remember.
It was before I went to West Brom, yeah. So the 3 teams that were interested in me were West Brom, Celtic and Newcastle. So 3 teams that were sort of all in a bit of a transition phase as well at the time. So this is how my move to West Brom came about in a real quick form. So Celtic didn't have a manager. West Brom had just had Tony Mowbray as a manager, and Newcastle just got relegated and Shearer was the manager, and he obviously wasn't taking over. So Newcastle didn't have a manager. But all 3 of those teams wanted me. So I had to wait for one of those to appoint a manager. So Tony Mowbray was the only person out of the West Brom hierarchy staff who didn't want me at West Brom. So then when he went to Celtic, so that was my Celtic move out of the window. And then it was a race between Newcastle and West Brom. And then I got a phone call from Dan Ashworth, who was the director of football at West Brom at the time. And he said, we're appointing our manager in the next couple of days. He's on board. He wants to bring you in as well. Wouldn't tell me who it was. And then it was... and then Newcastle didn't appoint Chris Hughton until about 4 or 5 weeks later. So that's how my move to West Brom came along.
And as a Celtic fan,
who got there first? Who got there first?
That's a real sort of fork in the road. Like, would you have gone to Celtic? Is that somewhere that you would have liked to play football, or would you have preferred to just end up in the Premier League?
No, do you know what? I had a chat with the Swindon chairman because we were in really constant dialect about people coming in with bids and everything else, and he was really good with me. And I remember sitting around the boardroom, and he said to me, he said, "Look, we've just had a bid from Celtic," and I was like, I said, "Brilliant," and he said to me, he said, "Listen, don't worry about theoretically like the Scottish League. Think of like the European, like the Champions League and everything else, and the Knights and everything." And I was like, I wasn't thinking about the Scottish League. I'm only thinking about that, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was definitely. It was. I mean, it was probably on par with like. I mean, they're all really big clubs and good football clubs, and they were all going to help me in one way or another. But it was definitely on my radar. One thing I would have loved to have done was go and play there.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the enticements of playing in Parkhead every second week in front of 60,000 passionate Celtic fans must have been a massive carrot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I watched the game the other night, the Celtic Kilmarnock game, and you just...
Not a great one. Not a great one to choose.
There was a game on the other day as well about... and they had both ends of the stadium, and like even an away game feels like a home game. Do you know what I mean? So like you never you're never too far away from a Celtic fan anyway.
Well, you're talking to one right now, so there that proves that point correct.
He's our resident in-house Celtic fan. Gives us the lowdown on Ange Postecoglou as well. He's a big Ange fan.
Absolutely. Before we let you go, Simon, you finished off with Southend before you went to Sydney. You were involved in a takeover bid with the club, were you, at one point in time?
Yeah, well, saying I was involved is probably. I didn't put any
Or
money in.
do you want to talk us through that, or what was your
tenuous
involvement?
No, so listen, I was a local businessman who I got shown a letter that he wrote to the chairman, or the chairman who just left, and I reached out to him and said to him about the takeover, and I was like, listen, I think it's going to be great if you get it over the line. I said, I know the dealings with the chairman, they're very, very tough, so if I can help in any way, please let me know. Within probably about a day, he got back to me. We had a Zoom call with him and his investors, who had like some serious plans for not just the football club, but for the city as well. Like they were planning on building like extra roads. They were planning on building or redirecting train lines and the stadium, and they were putting like a big indoor arena that they were going to do for like esports and everything else. They had really, really big plans for the city. Obviously, rebuild a training ground, build a brand new stadium, basically go down the line of what Brighton have done and build like in stages and get to the level where they're at now. And where Southend is a big catchment area for the players who possibly aren't good enough for like the Spurs and the Arsenal academies and the West Ham academies and even like Luton that's just only up the road, Watford. Really, really good young kids to be able to sort of nurture through the Southend Academy, but it just needs to be run properly. And he put his bid in, but I think the whole point that he and his team didn't get the takeover was probably because he had a few run-ins with the old chairman before. So I think he sort of cut his nose to spite his face, and he wasn't getting involved anymore.
Yeah.
And before we let you go, Simon, you mentioned a couple of names there when you were talking about managers, and I want to throw this at you. You mentioned Tony Mowbray, you mentioned Chris Hughton, two possible candidates for the Irish manager's job. I'm just wondering, is there any of the names that you've seen that you would love to see manage the Irish team at this moment in time?
Well, it wouldn't be Steve Bruce. I wouldn't
Okay.
want Steve Bruce. No, I
not?
don't think that. I don't think that would be a good. I don't think that would be a good fit. I like Chris Hughton. I think Chris Hughton would be a really good choice. But it's what do we want, right? What we've gone from having like experienced managers into Stephen Kenny, who is trying to nurture young players coming through the 23s into the first team. So if we then go and bring in like an older experienced managers, that will then go out the window. Do we not then bring like the young players through again? Are we just going to just go back to the sort of old ways again? So it will all come down to what do we want? Are we wanting to nurture, or are we wanting instant success, or are we looking 2 campaigns ahead and we're trying to nurture the lads through those 2 campaigns into something that could be good. So I would try and go down the route of somebody younger, but with an experienced head on the sideline alongside them. That would be my choice. I think it would be nice to be able to have that.
Okay. Right, well then, Simon, listen, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. Get up there and tell them people to turn down that music.
Okay,
yeah. And if I'm over your way sometime soon, I'll pop in for a class.
Absolutely. Welcome anytime.
You've been listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe.